My name is Bill O'Brien. I'm the Senior Advisor for Program Innovation at the National Endowment for the Arts. And that's a title that I've often gotten the charge out of when my colleagues try to introduce me to someone. It's hardly ever remembered. It's, I think, a difficult thing to keep your mind wrapped around. I've been accused of being some very interesting sounding things. But one of my favorites was Saren Twombly, one of the new colleagues we met at NSF not too long ago. She works in biology. Asked me what I did, and I said I was a senior advisor for program innovation. And she said, "Ooh, what is that?" And I said, "Well, we've been working on some really interesting collaborations with the military, looking at arts interventions and how that can help to a path to healing for TBI and psychological health. We've been doing a lot of art science intersection convenings with the National Science Foundation, the NEH. We did a challenge for the future of community arts journalism." And she said, "Oh, it sounds like you're the senior advisor for Weird Fun." And I like that title, but I like this one a lot as well. I do think that Weird Fun is an interesting way of looking at it. Weird is sort of odd, novel, something different. And fun, as Roger was saying earlier, I do think that there's really a sense of joy around a lot of this work. There's a sense of purpose, there's a sense of mission, and it's a really interesting group of people that I've been able to meet on some of these things, especially the seed stuff. I want to talk just a little bit about innovation. The word innovation is something that I think is used so much. Every car commercial, every appliance commercial, every paperclip company tries to get you to come to them for innovation. And it's been co-opted so many times that I think we often sort of lose track of what it really means. And I think especially in the seed conversation, when we thought long and hard about what do we mean by innovation, I think the most important thing about innovation isn't that it's something new or it's something different or it's something sexy and something you've not seen before, but really something that captures or harnesses existing capability and really allows those to pull you forward and in ways that matter. We'll come back to that later, but as I said to JD when he first reached out, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the upticks in art science grants that we've seen at NEA. It's not just at the NEA. We've been having lots of good conversations with people at NSF. Al DeSena said again today that these kinds of projects that are coming at all of us from these intersections are coming from everywhere. They're coming from leading research institutions, they're coming from hacker fairs. There really seems to be something in the air that is capturing people's attention and driving them to these intersections. At the NEA, we have seen a tremendous increase over the last few years. I think a lot of it would have happened anyway, but we did sort of respond to this over the last couple of years. We did an outreach. This is just one example of it, but we outreached into the art science communities, people who hadn't been looking in our direction and saying, "We're really interested in the kind of creativity that you're working in. Look our way, and we'll hook you up with the right discipline." It's not happening in the Office of Program Innovation for the most part. It's happening in all of our core groups, and we have a tremendous cohort of colleagues that lead all of the different disciplines, and multidisciplinary presenting and media are two of the disciplines that really have shifted their guidelines in an aggressive way to try to be embracing of these kinds of things. But it's really happening everywhere in arts education and theater and dance, all of the disciplines that we have. Last month, there was an article in Nature magazine. They called up and said, "We're really interested in what's going on here, and we want to understand what the job opportunities are." And that the journalist hooked up with our communications office, and they dug in with our research and analysis office, and they looked over the last 3 years and saw that grants that were focused on arts and science themes had increased by more than 300% just since 2009. And I think that that's, we're still on sort of an upward curve there. We just have begun to feel the outreach impact, and most of that hasn't been picked up in those 2012 grants. So there definitely is something in the air, and we were breathing a lot of that air over at the Smithsonian today. Also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the convenings and summits that have taken place since 2010. Um, Roger pulled up the map of really, I think, in some ways, the first big one that was co-funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and NSF. Again, Pam Jennings was instrumental. We worked very closely with her. Joan Chigakawa, who's sitting next to Pam, is very much a seed sower in all of this as well. She worked at Rockefeller before this, worked on cultural innovation grants. There would be no Office of Program Innovation if Joan didn't come. So um, this really allowed, I think, for me, it seemed the first time that people were really focused on creativity and impact from their own sectors, and really coming together in an intersection and sort of hashing it out for a couple of days. It led to a bunch of other subsequent convenings. I'll talk a little bit about them, but the first convening was really interesting, and it feels like such a lifetime ago. And some of the themes that came up at that first convening in those first few days, and as we sort of did our judo moves around each other for a minute to see how do we dance with each other. Some of the initial things seem almost quaint now, in terms of how do we get past this challenge of artists just being simply a utility of science, for example. I think Ruth and Francesca and people who've really been working in those fields have taught me, that that's really not the point. It's really about knowledge acquisition, and you come at it with different sets of tools. There's an artistic inquiry that allows you to think about things in a way that Dan Goods just sort of demonstrated in a really, really good way. The scientific method comes into play in a different way. You kick the tires on it and you look for the truth in a different way. But there are certain problems that if you can address them with all of those things and you use all of your faculties, we may be able to come to a better understanding about some things that really matter over the long term. The 2010 summit had a direct sort of progeny that amounted to a couple of other summits that were funded mostly by PAM and NSF, actually entirely by PAM and NSF, but still allowed the same conversation to continue. One focused on STEM to STEAM. There was another one at RPI that really went back and said, let's take another look at this, more or less a year later, or not even. And how do we look at this? How do we dig into the themes that we sort of uncovered there? And SEED sort of sprung out of that. There's other convenings though that NSF was funding from other programs that I was also invited to attend. One, I should have had that up there earlier. That's the story map. I'm going to bring it back later, and you've already seen it once. This is the story map that came out of the first one, and it's sort of, you see the two cultures of knowing who are trying to come together in a way that they can cross that bridge into a future state that is a little bit more higher functioning. This is the one that I was just talking about. It was called Art as a Way of Knowing. It was convened at Exploratorium. And while it wasn't a direct line of the same conversations, it really did, for me, made me back up and think about, in some ways, what is sometimes termed art for art's sake, which I think is a often overused and misused term. But just the sense of how is the artistic process, how is artistic engagement, how is arts making, creating a sense of knowing the world, knowing yourself, knowing the human condition, knowing something that you didn't know a second ago, or thinking about it differently than you thought about it a second ago. And there's something about the artistic process that is very liberating when you compare it to the scientific process, but I'm also becoming much more, I think, appreciative of why the scientific method is so important, and why we need to evaluate things that we intuit in the artistic process, and then we dig down and say, so what is that, and what's at the nucleus of it? So now I just want to talk a little bit about some of the overarching impressions. These aren't all my own. These are a lot of what I've been hearing. Oops, I just went back. That I've been hearing in a lot of different places. I think when you come into these intersections, you do develop some different impressions than you do if you're only operating in your own sectors or your own silos. One of these, good example of this, is a partnership between us and Walter Reed, and I think I saw Melissa walk in. Hello, Melissa. There's our partner in that. This is another multidisciplinary or non-disciplinary, in a way, collaboration. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Melissa has a really terrific mask and visual arts program that she's been working at the NICO, which is it's a facility for healing and hoping and a path to getting better, really, for TBI and psychological health issues for combat wounded warriors. We came in there with a writing program, and it was really interesting just in doing the lit review as we tried to pull the research together. The legacy of this writing, the writing experiments have come out of psychology sectors. The reason we looked at those is because the way they approached this made the most sense to us in a medical environment. They had outcomes like reduced doctor visits, reduced cortisol levels, and we kind of wanted to start from there. But as we dug in and we started looking at what they were doing, it was really kind of an exposure therapy-based practice, and it's been happening for about 20 years. Jamie Pennebaker, if anybody's heard of him, he's sort of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of all of that. And he came out and he visited with us and he said, don't trust anything we've done. Come at it fresh. We have a different population. We wanted to look at it differently. We were doing it a little bit differently. We were incorporating some themes that we were hearing from the patients and sort of echoing back more resilience-based themes. And we really started to think about what they really seemed to need, what they told us they were getting out of this was a newly discovered sense of self. They are going through transitions that are much more extreme than I can totally imagine, but I can certainly feel when we're working with them on a weekly basis. And so when we looked at the expressive writing research, it really, it was sort of Freudian. It was keep looking at this traumatic event long enough to the point where you can be assimilated and you're okay with it and it doesn't haunt you so bad. They seem to be, to my mind, echoing back to Aristotle, who was first a man of medicine, and then he got into arts, and I don't think he ever separated it. And we started looking back at what he thought about in the poetics and what catharsis really meant, and the idea of bringing intellectual clarity out of emotional chaos. And so we've sort of incorporated that. We tweaked it a little bit. It's going really well, and we've expanded it now to now we've just started testing a neurologic or music therapy program. And we're going to start doing some research on that soon. This is where this all ties back into the seed thing for me, and I tried to explain this a little bit earlier. The thing that I think what's changed my mind the most about art and how art works. Rocco Landesman, who is our recent chairman, came up with this new logo, Artworks, and it has artworks as a noun, like a painting, artworks as a verb, on you. What does it do to you? How does it change you? How is it transformative? And then artworks on communities and on economies. But that second one is the one that I've really been fascinated with, and it's about how you engage with something that you create meaning, and that meaning, that's interesting. That's different. Oh yeah, okay. But the idea, again, going back into other people's research and other discoveries, and for this one, Eric Kendall, if a number of you, I'm sure, probably know him, and he won a Nobel Prize with some partners about a little over a decade ago, and it talked about how memory is not like this thing that you pull out of a drawer and look at. It's not a photo, it's not a videotape, it's not static. It's something that you command into being every time you do it. It's proteins that just sort of snap into a certain line. And there was a real light that went off for me in terms of how does art work in a human being. You engage with something, you have an idea. I know moments of a play that have done that to me, that I've never thought about certain things again. I look through everything like that, through that filter. And that's the transformative impact, I think, of the art. And that's what it's happening at a molecular level. Oops. Pardon me. I think you can look at that at the molecular level, but you can also sort of pull out and look at a more global level. And I think that's what's happening here. You look at the two different kinds of ways of knowing, And I think we sense that there's really there's a lot of urgency around big problems right now. And we haven't really used all of our tools in a very coordinated or very intelligent way. I want to go to, let's see, how do I do this? I have a piece of artwork that can help me demonstrate this, I think. Casey Reyes, who a number of you may know. This is, what is going on here? Hold on. I seem to be in a different aspect ratio, but we'll just do it in the small version here. He has, with a partner, developed this program. It's a software program called Processing. You might see it better in the other one where there's not light, but it's basically, he codes a set of rules and then the art makes itself. Oh my goodness. Did we just lose power? Well, I'll now do some performance art. Now I'll have to describe it. So basically, you saw a little bit of it, but this program was based on a set of rules, and when you looked at it, it was there a second ago. If you can remember, hopefully your proteins sort of aligned in a way that you can remember it really well. But it had these little dots that were kind of roaming around, and they didn't really seem to have much of a strategic purpose, but they definitely had energy. They were like breaking new ground, and they were going somewhere. And I watched it over and over again, and it just felt like they were slowly, in a very beautiful way, covering this white canvas. And as they covered it, it became bigger and more beautiful, and it really, you sort of viscerally react to it. And then it becomes very interesting when you consider that the rules that he made are based on the way that proteins in cancer cells talk to each other and change over time. And these are these little pilots that aren't really, again, thinking. I'm sure that they're pretty, jazzed about what it is that they're capable of doing, and that's what they're there to do, and they're going to keep doing it. But it also occurs to me that it's not a very smart mission that they're on. The more they do this and the farther they go, they destroy their host and its curtains for them as well. And I think in some ways, I was then going to go back to the map. Imagine the map now. If you think about the big problems that we've been creating for ourselves, in some ways, we've been acting like little cancer pilots. A.O. Wilson says that we have Stone Age emotions, we have medieval self-image, and we have godlike technology. So just imagine if you put nuclear capabilities into those cancer pilots. And in some ways, that's kind of what we've been doing. We have such a short-sighted way of looking at things. We have, quarterly revenues for shareholders. We have short political cycles. But the thing that I feel most excited about, and I'm not going to probably go through all that, the thing that I feel most excited about in these seed conversations is that there is a sense of purpose and a mission that we can be better and that we can do more, and that we can pull it together from a lot of different places. And the innovation analogy that I always think about is like a sailboat. It's not like you have to invent the wind, but you can sense the wind in the ways that Dan was mentioning, and you can hoist a sail and you can move forward. And if we could just do that in a strategic way, we've sort of left the port of, gee, wouldn't it be nice? And we've sailed right into the, we better get it together seas. And I think what's driving this conversation is sort of a balanced thing between a sense of urgency. We better get it together. This can't continue. We have capability to do better. And then there's the sense of joy, I think, that Roger mentioned earlier. There's an app for everything right now. There's about to be an app for a song that plays based on the satellite in Juno. And there's an app for a lot of things that are making people money, and a lot of attempts at making money that don't make money. But how can we harness these things for really important outcomes? And then I go back to that wheel of integrative care at the NICO, where you put the patient at the center and you talk to each other, and we focus on the patient, we listen to him, and try to figure out what the best treatment plan would be. And if we could come at that center problem, those lists of problems that the white papers are calling attention, and figure out how can we all bring our sets of tools. The parade is forming at this end of that bridge. They're sort of chanting, "Let the weird fun begin," and they want to get up to the higher state. And so hats off to all the seed folks, because I know how much work has gone into this. Just today, it was exhausting. I'm exhausted. My computer can't take it anymore. It's just been a great series of conversations to be a part of. So thank you.